This conference will now be recorded.
I'll start that again. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the ICG's Digital Academy webinar series. So I'm Sally Alsop, the ICG committee member responsible for running our webinar program. So the webinar will be recorded, so if you prefer to remain anonymous, please turn your webcams off now. And also, could everybody put themselves on mute? So today's webinar, Building Better Business via the Screen. We're delighted to welcome Adam Woods, who is Chief Coach from the Camera Confidence Company. Adam has had a track record of working in the film, TV industry for several decades as a creative director for brands such as Discovery, Hallmark and National Geographic, as well as TV commercials director for brands such as CNN, BBC, Ericsson, LG, Philips and Siemens. His coaching program uses a powerful 6-step CAMERA model to help professionals, business owners and brands create clear, consistent and commercially relevant messages through empathic storytelling. In his webinar today, Adam will be providing strategies and tools to help you enhance your visibility and confidence to present on screen, so you can create more and deeper connections, as well as ways to be effective in your messaging on social media. As usual, there'll be a Q&A session at the end of Adam's presentation. So please, when we come to that, those of you on webcam, raise your hand if you have a question. If you prefer to remain anonymous, then please type your question in the chat box and I'll read those out after the hand raised questions. So we're delighted or really grateful to Perspective for sponsoring this webinar. Perspective Research Services provides help at every stage of the data journey as an end-to-end experience or simply to dip into when needed. They operate one of the largest independent call centres in the UK and state-of-the-art viewing facilities in the heart of London. They provide qualitative research, face-to-face fieldwork, qualitative recruitment, face-to-face fieldwork, B2B mystery shopping and data processing services. Before I hand over to Adam, here are some more events and webinars you may be interested in. Please visit the ICG website for more information. Don't forget, we're able to offer great value sponsorship opportunities with each of our webinars. Sponsorship normally costs £120 for a lot of exposure on our website, mailers and social media, and of course on the day. Please contact Lucy if you would like to know more. So our speaker today is Adam Woods, and I will now hand over to Adam.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sally. I really appreciate it and really grateful to be here. And those of you I can see and those of you who I can't see, really welcome here. And I'm going to spend about half an hour, 25 minutes just speaking. And really what I want to try and do is as much as possible share my experience and what I've learned. Hang on one second, let me just switch off the screen sharing. So I'm back to you. Around camera confidence and why it's important to everyone today. So I think we can perhaps all agree that during the pandemic, there's been an increase in screen time. It's very much here to stay, whether we like it or not. And I thought what's quite interesting sometimes is a bit of perspective around what's been happening. And I thought I'd just look at the stats from Zoom, which is the kind of video sharing app that seemed to get the most traction during the different lockdowns. And its users in the last 2 years grew 3,000%, with now 3 trillion meeting minutes every year. And the mobile app itself has been downloaded 485 million times. That was in 2020, so obviously it's increased. So clearly, without necessarily going to more stats, I think we all know that we're spending more time on screen and building relationships and running our businesses from the screen. Now, for a lot of reasons, that can be quite a positive thing. It gives us this location neutral ability. So I can be talking to anyone around the world and we can all be present to each other. It's incredibly efficient. We can get business done quickly without having to travel. And to a certain extent, it's got this personal connection. So I can see you, Mia, Susie, Clara, I can see you there. I feel like, yeah, thanks, waving for me. You know, we feel connected. We're in live, we're in present time. So obviously there are some negatives to that. I'm not being naive. We have this thing called Zoom fatigue, which is this aspect of like we're spending our whole lives on screen. And to a lot of people is this missing this real world interaction and this connection. So if those of you who are here and wish to, I've got the chat open, any particular insights that you've had around this period of time, this last 2 years, that perhaps we've been forced into this screen interaction, this Zoom meeting or WeChat meeting or whatever MS Teams that you use. So any observations, thoughts, any indications, just to help give me a flavor of what's going on for you and some of your thoughts about it. So feel free to chat whilst I take you through. So we're here in the sense of a very much a screen-based business. So what I want to do is just go to the sharing so I can share my screen with you. So here we are. And let me just check that you can see me. Yep. So hopefully you can see better business via the screen. So hopefully what I'm intending to do today is to really serve you in terms of trying to indicate why we can really bring our full selves to the camera and really build our business from the screen. Now, my belief is we're now incredibly connected, like never before on a global basis. And I've just given you some stats of why that's the case. And when I say better connected, I do believe, and what I'm going to kind of focus on here is how we can really intentionally use our time and our energy in front of the screen to really build connection on a really empathic scale in terms of building relationships, but also in our ability to really build relationships and build better business. So I've just got many screens in front of me now. So what I call this is the rise of the screen-based business. We've seen this amount of screen time increasing, both in terms of meetings, but also in the terms of how we bring ourselves to our audiences through social media. And I'd love to know in the chat if you could perhaps share with me what's the most important space for you to learn most about in terms of engaging through the screen? Is it that you want to bring more of your confidence and presence to your screen-based meetings with your clients or your prospects? So that's A. B, is it that actually in your work, so perhaps you might be working with research participants in your research projects, so actually how you conduct your work with research participants is B, or C, how you want to come across and promote and market yourself on social media. So yeah, A, B, or C. A is your online video meetings with prospects or clients. B, actually doing the work and research. Thank you, Sally, saying A. Or C, actually online marketing via social media. So and so optimizing. Thank you very much, Teresa. That's great. Mia, appreciate that. Ella. It really makes a sense to optimize your business for the screen. But what does that really mean? Thank you, Matt. That's great. B and C. So quite a range of different things. So I'll try and play to those 3 different aspects as much as I can over the call. Thank you, Iris. Now, my belief is that we can build powerful, long-lasting, and effective business relationships purely and solely on the screen. And this is what my passion is that I believe that we are to a certain extent remotely working a lot, and that can really bring some anxiety around. A lot of people I coach might not be that confident on bringing themselves to the screen. I certainly know as a filmmaker, having made films around the world for many years, that it's not for everyone. And for me, what I'm passionate is helping people really bring their full selves, their authentic selves to the camera to really build better relationships and business. So I'm going to talk about ways in which I think this is important in 4 specific areas. So let me just go back to my slide to share that. Finding that screen, here we go. This is a new bit of software for me to learn. So I have this thing called tech tests, and technology is always testing us. And to a certain extent, whenever I'm doing lives, there's always something that goes slightly not according to intention. So it's actually a quality of your own ability to deal with tech, which I think kind of shows up a lot of who you are and how you roll with it. So business really for me is personal these days, and I'll talk a little bit about that. I'm going to talk a bit about how deep connection can be very instant through the screen. Why is deep connection important? How about energy, your state, your the way that you bring your full self to the camera is really important in terms of building relationships at a very authentic level, but also through really developing relationships that lead to better business. And then lastly, I talk a bit about how consistency builds trust and a little bit about the power of branding in that respect. So first up, business is personal. And well, here I am, I'm my business, and I'm me, I'm talking to you, and in a way I am my business. My brand is me and my business. I have others work with me and for me and my business, but I'm the front of it. So very much increasingly, particularly in smaller business with solopreneurs, it's very much about the rise of the personal brand, and that can be just in the way you conduct yourself in networking, in webinars, online meetings. And when I look at this frame that I'm in at the moment around me, in terms of from a filmmaker's perspective, I'm in a sort of medium close-up. And as a filmmaker, when I'm creating a scene with actors or with presenters, or depending on the nature of the program or the film that I'm making, this is quite intimate. You know, I can see, you know, you can see my eyes, you can see the way I am, the framing, you can see my background. It's not like a wide shot, so it's quite intimate. And through this kind of medium close-up, we can read a lot of nuances of behavior. And there are basically 10,000 or up to 10,000 non-verbal cues that we're taking in every minute when we're looking at someone. I believe it's actually far higher than that, because I think the subconscious works on a much deeper level. But so we're picking up all kinds of mannerisms and all kinds of tonalities, and most of it on a subconscious level, but it does make an effect. And they say that also a research project run by the University of Manchester a few years back, so that only 7% of communication is actually the actual words that we're using. So much more rest of it is our physiology, our energy, our body language, and how we come across. So it's very important, the manner and the state, the energy that you're in terms of the way you convey information. And I think it's also really, you're really able to influence and engage effectively, perhaps more so in a real life scenario, because in a real life room there might be all sorts of other distractions, but here we're kind of looking at each other. And so really something, just some small tips, I'll try and give you some tips as I go through this presentation. Pay attention to the way that you're sitting. Now, if I've got a microphone on my computer here, so I'll do it very gingerly. But if I'm talking to you like this, I've got this what's known as headroom above me, and it creates this sense of I'm slightly smaller in screen. So I have a sort of slightly diminished personality. And also, if I'm looking down at the camera, hang on, let's do. If I'm looking up, it creates this sense of like I'm not that confident. Or if looking down, there's a slight sense of, you know, it's literally looking down at people. So something you can just play around with is, you know, is your stage set for you to being present? So as you watch newsreaders on the news, they'll be filling screen to a certain extent, head and shoulders. Also the way your arms, if you want to convey information, it might not be that you're very comfortable with using hand gestures, but it can also convey a lot of information. And the reason why some of this is important, our background's important as well, in terms of, yeah, someone, Clara, I can see you just adjusting your frame there. It's not that we're trying to put on a show or that we want to be a newsreader or acting, it's just that the other person's going to pick up cues. Now, of course, a lot of us are now working from home, so pay attention to where the lighting is. Now, if I switch my light off, you know, it gives you a slightly different, I've got no light on my face, you can't really see my eyes, and it's got a slightly sort of lower energy vibe to it. So just a small adjustment of light. I'm fighting with the biggest light in the world now, which is bright sunshine. And also from a lighting perspective, soft lighting on the face is really, really important, and particularly in the eyes, because the eyes are the sort of communication to the soul. So it's really important the eyes can be seen. If you're wearing glasses and you've got a light shining at you, just check the angle of the light so it's not directly facing your glasses. So it's helpful for you to kind of be front and center, not too small, because then people can read what you're doing. So a bit about business is personal. So yeah, for some people that can be quite uncomfortable, the way we're bringing ourselves more to the camera, the way we're being seen, but it's super important in terms of how you build empathy and connection for your relationships. So secondly, deep connection can be instant. I started my business in 2019, and obviously lockdown happened, and I was doing all my coaching because I do coach people in the room with the camera. Hi Sally, good to see you there. Switch the camera on. It's good to see a few other people. I've been coaching throughout lockdown one-to-one with clients, and I've had some amazing breakthroughs with clients through their confidence through just this medium of connecting on screen. So I know personally that the screen is a very powerful medium for us to create deeper connections. So before that, I was making, as Sally mentioned, I was a TV advertising director, making a lot of films for CNN, traveling the world, and working with people for whom English was not a first language, and often through a translator. But actually, body language and intention and energy meant that we felt very deeply connected. So as I say, it's not just the words, it's the way you bring that through. And for me, it's an element of catharsis. The camera can create catharsis, can create an emotional connection. Now, our business, and I don't know your businesses that well, but our business might not have, you might not think of emotion being important to your business. You know, it might be that it's a lot of aspects of a rationality in the way that you talk about what you do. But I tell you, the emotion and then the level of interpersonal connection is super important in terms of how you build those relationships, and also the buying signals, which I'll talk about briefly in a second. So deep connection can be instant, but the important thing is that it comes from you. I love this quote by Albert Schweitzer. Example is not the main thing in influencing others, it's the only thing. So if you wish to build empathic, good relationships in your business, it's important that you bring your full self to those relationships and that you engage empathically with person. They really feel listened to you. So if you watch interviews, say on the news, you might have a filmed interview with someone and they cut back to the interviewer and he or she's going, it's called a noddy in the trade. And basically what you're showing is you're actually listening to someone. It's a bit of a trick, but certainly if someone's talking to you, you can show that you're listening by looking straight at the camera. So I know where my lens is, which is just there. If I'm looking at myself, I'm not looking at the camera. If I'm looking at you, I'm not looking at the camera. So occasionally looking up at the camera, showing that you're, and yeah, that's great, Susie, you got it there. Obviously, once you put your finger on the camera, do wipe it, because it can then give you this slightly, I'll just prove it. You know, it gives you this slightly Vaseline effect, which is great for 1960s romantic movies, but not so good for 21st century business communication. But it all counts because our minds are picking up all sorts of visual cues. So yeah, mirror behavior as well. You know, I'm picking up, I'm listening, I'm watching you, I'm seeing sort of feedback, I'm looking at what you're up to. So I've seen some dreadful behavior on business calls where people are actually sitting there, you know, on their phone in a meeting. And by the way, it's not like I don't judge anyone. It's just if I'm trying to create a connection, it's important that I feel like there's active listening going on. So if you want to build better relationships, you need to be the example. And there is something which I'm actually rubbish at right now because I'm trying to do a lot in a relatively short amount of time. There's a thing called latency, which is a technical word for the delay. So when I was in lockdown, I was part of a choir, and trying to sing online, I tell you, it was like a nightmare because of latency. It's all delayed. But there is a thing as like I kind of call emotional latency. It can take time for someone to take in what we've said. So pace yourself on online meetings. Give time for things to settle and land. And some people need a lot more time to reflect and take things in, particularly in this sort of quite intense gaze that we've got with this sort of medium close-up. So you might leave more time. And as an interviewer on for say CNN, I learned that actually at the end of a question, I would ask a question and get an answer, but at the end of their answer, I would just be quiet and nod. And often it's the second answer, the subsequent answer they come in, because you know nature abhors a vacuum, and that often if you leave that space, the thing they really want to say comes up. So yeah, pacing and allowing people to really take their time is super important. So yeah, just create that pacing and that space for people to reflect. I think particularly when we're in a digital environment, you know, you might put a Zoom meeting or a GoToWebinar meeting in for half an hour and It's a sense of, well, I've got to use this half an hour for all this information and get it talked and done. But what we're missing is that human interaction. Yeah, Gillian, exactly. Very true for depth interviews as well, leaving space. So yeah, just leaving some space. We're missing out on those water cooler moments. There's like, aha, like, oh yeah, the sort of the meeting about the meeting. So I've coached a few organizations during lockdown on team building and how they connect with each other virtually. It was very much scheduling sort of water cooler times or virtual coffees or just hanging out. So just be aware that everyone's need for space is very different, and respecting people with that and allowing them some space to reflect on the call, and maybe booking a second session, say, well, let's catch up about what we shared, and then, you know, we've got some reflection time. So thirdly, energy is everything. I love this quote from the TED speaker, author and podcast person, Brené Brown. Connection is the energy created between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued. And I think this paying attention to people is super important. And when you give it, you get it back. So it's this reciprocal aspect of human nature. And I think the power of attention is something we need increasingly these days. We've got far more information than we can possibly. I think we've ended the information revolution and the communication revolution. I think we're now in the attention revolution, or the attention economy, that we need to give people more attention, and we need to receive attention ourselves, and to really give that what I call hallowed space for people to really feel seen, heard, and valued, so that they feel like you understand their needs. And for me, that's around the power of intention, that we have a really intentional aspect to the way we build communication. So in my mind, I had an intention for this conversation today to really serve you, to give you as much of my insights and knowledge and experience to really boost your presence and make you realize that the way you come across on screen is going to be important to the depth and the effectiveness of your relationships. So because I've been going around as a filmmaker, the world, connecting with lots of different cultures, classes, creeds, and colors, I noticed that there was something that brings us all together, an innate human need for connection. So my value is, my deepest value is connection. So what I wanted to do was take my experience as a filmmaker and allow people to learn some of those abilities to bring their full presence to the screen on their own, without me necessarily having to drag a film crew around to their office. So I created a 6-step camera model, which Sally referred to, which I'll talk about briefly in a second. But I created this structure, which for me is the essence of really effective communication. So lastly, in terms of my 4 points I wanted to talk about, was consistency builds trust. So how we turn up and build that relationship in an intentional way needs to be consistent. So we're not changing our patterns and our behaviors. Now our moods change, our emotions change, and our thinking changes. But when you build, excuse me, this relationship online, it's really important that you are consistent about it. Excuse me. Particularly in this idea of business being personal, the way you come across in terms of your behavior being regular, consistent, and congruous will be important to the way you build those relationships. And what I mean by that is that we make a choice. You know, how we bring ourselves to the camera and how do we bring ourselves to the meetings is a conscious choice, even though we don't, you know, just because our laptop's sitting there and our sofa's here and our background's there, that's still a choice, even though we've made it maybe unconsciously. So just paying some more attention to the way you're sitting and the way you're behaving, in order that, you know, people can see you in the way that you wish to be received. And it's very much what I think about is not so much what you say, it's how you say it. So very much your engagement. And I love this quote from the beautiful author Maya Angelou. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. So ensuring that you're building an environment where you feel connected and that you're paying attention to people and really giving them an insight into who you are and really sharing who they are. And yes, there's tension. You know, I just slightly lost my voice then, and I could have gone, oh my gosh, and technology might go wrong, but it's still, we're all human. There's no like automatic way of being. And I think very much when things go wrong or you lose your voice, there was 2 minutes before we came live, my neighbor was drilling downstairs next door, and suddenly was like, oh my god, where shall I move? And I just texted him to say, hold off the drill. You know, this happens. We've seen zooms of cats walking across the screen. This is part of what makes us human. We've got humans on the other side of it. So bring more of your human to the screen and really, learn to love who you are and learn to love the way that you are on screen, so that you can build those effective relationships. And I know, by the way, part of the reason I chose to be a director rather than an on-screen presenter was, you know, I'm naturally not comfortable on camera, and I've had to learn. And the way I did that was by my coaching and also my Camera Confidence Club, which is a free Facebook group that I have where I coach, and I go live there most days, just to give some insights on something I think is important for people to learn. So I've learned my own muscle. So confidence is a muscle that can be learned. And so if you're sitting there going, there's no way I want to bring myself to the camera in this kind of environment or share more of myself, it can be learned. And that's the kind of core of my coaching, is to give people that clarity and that confidence. So I just want to briefly share before we head into Q&As, if I can find my screen button. Let me go back to the screen. Awesome, excellent. So those are the 4 aspects I was talking about. Hopefully, there we go. Great. So this is just briefly my 6-step model, and I'll just give you a brief insight why I think these particular things are important. So the C, the camera, is the acronym CAMERA. C is your calling. And when you really have a deep connection, understanding, and clarity around your why, it's super, it comes across as being very powerful, and you can go through almost anything when you have a big enough why. And so I help remind the clients I work with what is their why, and it can go deeply personal. There's a reason why you're in business. There's a reason why you're here where you are today, and maybe you're out of alignment with your why, and that's interesting as well. You know, maybe parts of your business don't serve your passion, your purpose. So, but getting clear on that. But also when you're just doing a messaging like a video or live, being really deeply intentional around my why kind of helps it from becoming just another piece of communication. It brings a deeper purpose to it, an intentionality. Your who, your audience, the A. And for me, that's not just the person I'm talking to, but if I'm like talking to the camera and I can't see all, like, you know, I can see a few of you now, and I'm, you know, I could be sitting there going, oh, what does anyone think of me? By the way, this is very, very common, this judgment, this particularly on social media, who's out there. So I'm really clear about who I love to work with. So I have a very clear idea of the kind of person, their fears, their needs, their desires, and what's holding them back. So I can play to that with confidence without worrying about what I'm being like or what anyone else is doing in front of me. The message, this clarity of message, is super important, and it's boiled down to a really single-minded message. And this is more than just a tagline, it's an intentionality around how we bring our clarity of message to the screen. Our empathy, the E, as I say, the how is very important. And I think, you know, I've worked with a lot of actors, you know, Patrick Swayze, Jeremy Irons, gosh, all sorts of people around the world for all sorts of different broadcasters there. And what I watch is that some people can bring a particular personality to the screen, and anyone can do this. It's not about acting, but it's about being intentional with your energy and how you build that empathy. So it's something I love doing with my clients, is helping them move beyond any blocks to something else that's just great fun. Being really clear about your desired response from any piece of communication. What do I want out of it? So a lot of people just share stuff without actually having an intention behind what's the result they want from it. And when we're really clear on the result, I think it makes our communication so much more effective. And then action, everything's action. Clarity comes from engagement, not thought. If we stay in our heads thinking about it, we'll never get it done. So most of my coaching is around action orientated. I'm just aware of the time. So I'll wrap up briefly now, Sally, but I just want to just leave a brief offer, because I think what I love to do is, you know, engage with the community and hear more about what your needs and desires are and what you're stuck with. So I've got an offer just for the ICG membership. I have a 90-minute clarity call with clients to get them really clear on their their why, their audience, their messaging, and the empathy. And so I go deep in 90 minutes around setting a stage, so we can talk about lighting and how you come across. But from that conversation, I create a personalized 6-step camera blueprint. And also for you, if you want to work with me on an ongoing basis, I have an 8-week process, a foundation program that I work with one-to-one with the client, where I work with them solidly through those 8 weeks, working on their goals. And I've got a discount there on screen for those in the ICG. So that 90-minute call, I've discounted it to $299, and there's a link there which I can put in the chat shortly. If you're interested in knowing more about what I do and getting clear on how you can bring more of yourself to the camera. I worked recently with Jess, this wellbeing coach, and she talked about how she felt much happier, more confident doing lives. And this is a picture of her on Channel 5 News. Talking about her business, and from where she was before being terrified of the camera to doing this. But what was really nice is she said, it's something I can play around with, being me, a different side of my personality. So yeah, I love having breakthroughs with clients around that. So just some thoughts there. I'll share the link in the chat, but that's me, and I'm happy to receive any questions or anything else anyone would like to know. Sally.
Thank you, Adam. That was absolutely fascinating. I get the feeling that we've just touched the tip of the iceberg here, and that we could spend a lot longer talking to you about this. But I have, before anybody else asks any questions, there aren't any that I can see in the chat box at the moment, but I have one. Get the ball rolling. What about clothing? How would you advise that people present themselves in terms of clothing? I have a dog that I walk sort of 4 times a day, so I tend to dress down when I'm working from home. But what's your advice when you're conducting meetings, taking part in meetings?
It's thank you, Sally. It's really important. I mean, when working on a film set, costume and makeup are the places where the presenters or actors I work with feel most comfortable, because they're basically putting on their kind of armor, as it were. They're kind of feeling confident about where they are. So always feel comfortable with what you're doing. I always say avoid too many dark or very bright colors. I mean, I'm wearing a white shirt, and that's okay, but it can get a bit overexposed, and very tight patterns, particularly like pinstripe suits or very tight patterns, can sometimes fizz on screen. It's not quite so bad on Zoom, because Zoom doesn't have a very ultra high quality picture. But yeah, just feeling comfortable, and also congruity, looking at what your clothing says about you, the formality. It's similar to just real life meetings, Sally, and to a certain extent it's like, it gives off a signal. So just because we're working from home, that's obviously, or some of us are working from home, means that we've got a kind of this sort of fluidity between work and home. And so just being conscious of the relationship you're in, and maybe dressing for that, I think is really important. And certain things, like if you've got a lot of jewelry on or watches and you're clunking the desk, and I've got a professional microphone I use to help with the sort of quality of voice, which is different from the microphone in your laptop. So yeah, just pay attention to what you're bashing around on screen. And yeah, and also I've got a question in the chat actually. What do you advise on backgrounds for researching with consumers? That's something I wanted to share actually, which might, to your question, Maria, what I might do is see if I can do this. Hang on, I'll have to go and find the Zoom screen. I might not be able to do this. I've got so many different screens going. Let me just see if I can share my screen. Actually, anyone else got a question whilst I try and figure out how to stream Zoom into this meeting?
Well, I have another question if we're killing a bit of time. So how do you create that empathy when you cannot see your audience? So when you're doing a debrief, for example, the software that I use means that you can only see the screen that you're presenting. You can't actually see people's faces and how they're reacting to what you're saying. So how do you create that connection or maintain that connection when you can't see people?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I think, I mean, as you see earlier on, I was looking at the screen trying to work out where everyone was, and making sure I could speak. So there might be 1 or 2 people there, and it's really nice. And Peter, I've just seen you pop up, so it's good to see you here. I think, as a host or being interviewed, Maria, it's good to see you here. Matt, excellent. It's like paying attention to the room in a way, and looking at cues. And when I'm coaching in a group environment, I'll be, you know, playing to people and looking at how their body language is. But it's my first team coaching was to a German organization right at the beginning of lockdown, and I had 30. I was talking for an hour to 30 names on a screen, no cameras on. And I was in presenter mode. I was talking behind my slides, but I wasn't really, I wasn't really connecting. So do what you can with what you've got. And I think that would really, sort of help in terms of how you engage. So yeah, if you haven't got the cameras on, great. I've got some other questions in the chat here. Not being able to bring my Zoom background up, but Zoom allows you to blur your background, which can help if you've got stuff in the background you don't want to share, which is quite helpful. It's not perfect, it's not great green screen, but and then you can use virtual backgrounds. I think I've avoided virtual backgrounds because it has an element of being slightly artificial, but it can be really helpful in terms of just providing a professional background. So I would keep things neutral and not too busy. So that's your answer, Maria. Sorry, I wasn't able to share my Zoom background and show you a couple of alternatives, but if I can, I will. What are some ways to avoid glare on glasses? Yes, Mia. Yeah, it's a really big one, and on film sets we really struggle sometimes with that. But the key thing is when you've got light behind, as I have, and I'm looking at the lens, you're going to get the light reflected. So look at playing with putting the light to one side, and then the reflection won't go straight into the lens. Obviously, anti-reflective can be helpful. On film sets, we have a spray which mats things down. So if there's like a hot spot on an object which is getting a bright reflection, you can spray it and it dulls it. But clearly, you don't want that in your glasses. So that's a key thing. Would you advise us to be seeing ourselves when talking to others or turn our own view off? That's a great question, Lucy. Halfway through, or just at the beginning of this presentation, my Zoom screen was on, and I was looking at myself talking back, and it was really, I found it really confusing. So that's probably why I had to switch my Zoom background off. So I wasn't looking at myself. I think try and look at the people you're engaging with as much as possible, and just be aware of where they are, what they're sitting, and what they're doing. So yeah, I don't always switch it off. I think it's I try not to get too worried about the tech. I just sort of flow, but it's more important that I'm looking at the people on screen. Mia's question: how do you deal with varying light levels if you sit in a window? If you pull down the blind and use artificial light, or adjust the blind as needed. I deliver 1 out of 2. And weather here can go. Yeah, that's a good point, Mia. I think the sun is the biggest light in the universe, so it's great to use it. But you might have a voile or a soft blind you can pull that just makes it softer and more controllable. But clearly, if the sun's going in and out, you can't switch that off. One option is you just have a blackout blind. I've got blackout curtains here, and then I just have an artificial light. So it's important you want to be consistent throughout the hour, then block out the outside light and use artificial lighting. So yeah, that's a couple of things. I mean, the quality of light, actually, I've got a light that has indoor light setting. So it's much browner there, so you can see it's more brown. That's for evenings, and it matches the interior light. This is tungsten, so it's got a different Kelvin setting, which is the color temperature, and then it goes much cooler. So it's a more cool setting, so it takes out some of the redness from the face. Well, there is a bot here.
Sorry, Mia wanted to come back on that one. If you want to ask your question, you're on mute, by the way.
Hey.
Yeah, I've pulled the blind down before, but I'm still struggling with this artificial light, so I feel just really stuck with this.
Yeah, I can't. I'm not sure I can make you. I can't make you presenter, but yeah, I mean, from what I'm seeing, small screen now, it's great because I can see your face, and your face is the most important thing. So it's really, and it's there's no sort of deep shadows coming from one side or the other, so you're illuminated very, very well. And your background is actually darker than mine, so it puts you forefront, so you're very well lit there. I can see there's a little bit of reflection in your glasses just from the tiny square in my screen, but it's not sufficient to really make it difficult. And by the way, we're not here to be on movies, but it's just the way we're connected and the way that we feel. So I'd say you've got a great And color is really helpful. You know, the red you're wearing has got a nice warmth to it, and so it does convey an element of your character. And yeah, if we were doing feng shui, I'd look at the way your sofa was in the background, and you know, not there's anything right or wrong about it, but just sort of play around with, because you know, increasing amount of our work's being done on screen. It's important that you feel that your stage is really saying something about who you are and what you do. But as I say, there's nothing right or wrong. It's just that people will pick up certain aspects about you in there.
Susie, I think, added a question: where should the artificial light be placed? I think you mentioned to the side, but can you be a little bit more specific?
Yeah, I mean, you can see, well, you probably can't, but I'm right in front of the window and the sun kind of comes and goes. So I have a blackout blind here that I shut and a desk lamp, but I never really know where to put the lamp because it just looks,
Yeah, no, perfect. And yeah, any light will lose to the sun. The sun is so much brighter than anything, any artificial light. Well, not any, but obviously it's quite a long way away. But yeah, so effectively, I mean, just to be honest, if we're doing face-to-face like this, and it's a good light behind your laptop, which will just shine on your face, which will then, it's just basically, and it's a soft light, so LED is really helpful, and that can just share our face. So these lights are used mainly for modeling. So when you see a close-ups of models in magazines, they'll have a little ring in their eyes sometimes, and this is what this ring light's called. And the camera will generally, in a ring light, will go through the center of the ring so that the eye is seeing this ring, and it picks that up. And it's very for fashion, it's really important that pupils pop, they call it. But for this kind of interpretation, as long as our face has got good great, you know, luminosity on it, it means that people can connect with us. Yeah, it can create a ring. So that's why it's just put it to one side slightly, and then you might find that if you just tilt your desk, you have a balance of the natural light. If I was working with a lighting cameraman, we'd do 3 or 5 point lighting, which is you know, picking up your hair and different key lighting and soft shadows on the other side of your face. So lighting is a real art. So yeah, at night particularly, yeah, exactly, it can set off contrast. But yeah,
another question for you, Adam. What would you say are the most important bits of kit if you want to go from just sort of your ordinary office equipment to something a little bit more sophisticated but not spend a fortune on it? What would you recommend?
I'd say a light is really really good, and what I can do is I can send you some links to you to use. I do all my lives on my phone, so a good quality phone, because I'm walking and talking at the same time, and I'm just much more relaxed when I'm walking, and I have a different way of thinking when I'm walking. So so I think a good light can just help bring that clarity up, and they're you know, anything between, well, the very cheap ones can be 40 pounds. My one's about 70 pounds. It's mains operated, it's LED, so it doesn't pick out a lot of light, and it's soft, and I can change the luminosity, so I can make it much lower, and then I can turn it up just to match the lighting. I think a good microphone is helpful. This is a Shure microphone, which is good for podcasting, particularly. And I think obviously if your laptop struggles with video processing, so the power of your laptop or your computer, if it struggles with that, video is very there's a lot of data streaming through video, because there's lots of pixels happening on screen. So if you're doing a lot of video calls and your computer's struggling, it means your processor, your graphics card and your processor is struggling to keep up. So ensuring you've got something kind of quite up to date to help you, yeah, to do that, and just keep it. You'll notice it if it starts stuttering. Sometimes it can be the quality of your broadband. So particularly if you've got fiber, it's quite helpful. But if you have low bandwidth on your, it's particularly your upload speeds. So ideally try to get up to 10 megabits per second in your upload speed. So I'm getting to technology here, but it's important you have a good upload speed, because that's you sending your video out. So yeah, good quality laptop. I don't go a lot for webcams. You can buy nice webcams. You can also shoot with a proper digital camera your video to create a depth of field, but that gets into complexity that perhaps isn't, you know, not for everyone. But certainly some of my clients have, invested in sort of mini studios because they're doing lives and podcasts, and it's a central part of their business. So the sky is not necessarily the limit, but it's the most important thing. It's not the hardware, it's the software. It's you, it's your manner, it's tonality, your ability to really relate and communicate through the screens is the thing that will make the most difference. Technology will help, but yeah, it's your manner, your tone, and your confidence in building those relationships.
So I think another question from Mia, are headsets a good idea in terms of the mic and audio quality? Is that something you recommend?
Yeah, no, perfect, exactly. I decided not to have headphones for this talk because I thought it'd be distracting to you. So I think I tend not to use them because then it's just, if I'm looking at someone with headphones, it's sort of like it's nothing wrong with it. It's just I'm picking up the fact they've got headphones, and obviously what they're doing is they're hearing my voice really clear. So they got my voice right in their ears, so it can be very beautiful for podcasts. But I do a lot of my lives using a bone conduction headset, which is basically, it doesn't go in my ears, it fits around the back of my ears, and I do my lives using that, and it picks up my voice really clearly, but it doesn't stick in my ears. I just don't like having things over my ears for very long periods of time because I've been in editing suites for a long time with headphones on, and it can ache after a while. But yeah, it's the quality of, I use a really simple pair of headphones for most Zoom calls, and that does me fine. And it's not too visually imposing, so I don't think it's really a question of but yeah, I think getting lightweight ones is really important as well because they can often hurt your ears. Nikki's got a question around, should I look at the camera most or focusing the other people in the group so I can see the expressions? It's a really good point, Nikki. So I'm looking at the lens right now and I'm really engaging, but I can't see you. So I think it's a question of like balancing it to sort of look out where you are and create rapport and then maybe look back to camera. There are some gadgets which allow the camera to be looking in the middle of the laptop screen, but I think they're just too cumbersome right now. Yeah, for me, it's the eye contact's really important. So I think vary it depending on where you're at, and when you're talking, maybe not looking at how they're reacting. You can just talk straight to the camera, but then when they're talking, maybe look away. Helpful if their face is quite near where the camera is on your computer screen. On Zoom, I put the most important person near the camera. Yep, top middle of the screen. Exactly, Peter. Yeah, the closer the camera lens is, remember that it's often not where you think it is. It's often somewhere else. And I think on certain PCs, it used to be down the bottom of the screen. So yeah, position of the cameras.
That's something that you can manipulate in the screen. You can move people around on the.
I think Peter indicates it can be on Zoom. Yes, on Zoom you can.
Yes, you can on Zoom.
Yeah, move around. So yeah,
No idea.
exactly. Make it comfortable for you.
Okay, any more questions while we've got Adam at our beck and call? No? Okay, well, thank you very much indeed, Adam. That's been absolutely fascinating. Very helpful, lots of very useful tips there, I think, for all of us. Thank you to everybody for logging in. Do join us again on one of our future webinars. And yeah, have a great afternoon, everyone. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much for the feedback and the questions. And yeah, go out there, share your authentic self on camera because everyone else is taken. There's only you.
Bye, everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Bye, everyone.